Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, Shattered Reality. Russell Mercer never saw the truck coming. One moment, he was driving home from his construction company's biggest project celebration. The next, his world exploded in a cacophony of screeching metal and shattering glass. His last conscious thought was of Adrienne, his wife of 12 years, and how he needed to call her. Then darkness. When Russell partially regained consciousness in the ambulance, he caught fragments of urgent voices, multiple fractures, internal bleeding, need to operate immediately. Dr. Hannah Ramirez leaned over him in the emergency room, her eyes reflecting both compassion and concern. "Mr. Mercer, we need to perform emergency surgery. Do you understand?" Russell managed a weak nod before the anesthesia pulled him back into darkness. Hours later, Dr. Ramirez stood outside the ICU, her surgical scrubs still stained with Russell's blood. She dialed the emergency contact number in his phone. "Mrs. Mercer, this is Dr. Ramirez from Lakeside Memorial Hospital. Your husband has been in a serious accident." Adrienne's voice sounded strangely detached. "What happened?" "Head-on collision. He's stable but critical. Multiple fractures, internal bleeding. We've performed emergency surgery." "I see." The doctor frowned at the lack of urgency in the woman's voice. "Mrs. Mercer, you should come to the hospital immediately. Your husband is in serious condition." "I can't right now. I'm walking my new dog." Dr. Ramirez blinked in disbelief. "Mrs. Mercer, I don't think you understand. Your husband might not survive the night." "I'll try to come tomorrow," Adrienne replied flatly. Disturbed, Dr. Ramirez called Russell's second emergency contact, his parents. Samuel Mercer answered on the third ring. "Hello, Mr. Mercer. This is Dr. Ramirez from Lakeside Memorial. I'm calling about your son, Russell. What's happened?" "He's been in a serious accident. He's critical but stable. We've performed emergency surgery." "Oh my." Samuel's voice lowered to a whisper, seemingly speaking to someone else. "It's Russell. Accident. Hospital." A muffled conversation followed before Samuel returned to the line. "We're rather tied up at the moment." "Did you call Adrienne?" "Yes, but she said she couldn't come." "Well, if she's not going then." His voice trailed off. Dr. Ramirez's professionalism barely contained her shock. "Mr. Mercer, tonight might be his last. I strongly urge you to reconsider." "We'll try to visit when we can," Samuel replied before hanging up. Dr. Ramirez stared at her phone in disbelief. In 15 years of medicine, she'd never witnessed such callousness from a family. Back in the ICU, Russell drifted in and out of consciousness for 3 days. On the 4th day, his eyes finally opened fully. "Where am I?" he rasped through parched lips. "Lakeside Memorial," Dr. Ramirez answered, checking his vitals. "You've been here 4 days, Mr. Mercer. You were in a serious accident. Did anyone—" Russell winced as pain shot through his chest. "Has anyone come to see me?" Dr. Ramirez hesitated, her clipboard clutched tightly. "I'm afraid not. We contacted your wife and parents immediately after your surgery." Russell's face remained unnervingly still, but something changed in his eyes. A spark extinguished, replaced by something darker. "I see," he said quietly. "Would you like me to call them again?" she offered. "No," Russell replied. His voice was calm, but carried a new edge that made Dr. Ramirez shiver involuntarily. "Instead, I'd like to speak with a lawyer." By the 6th day, Russell had regained enough strength to sit upright. He'd spoken at length with Olivia Blackwell, a sharp-eyed attorney who had taken detailed notes and left with a grim nod of understanding. That evening, Russell asked for a pad of paper and a pen. When Dr. Ramirez delivered them, she found him looking out the window, his profile carved in stone. "Thank you, Doctor, for everything," he said without turning. "Especially for trying to get my family here." "I'm just sorry they haven't come," she replied. "I'm not," Russell said, his voice distant. "Not anymore." That night, Russell wrote throughout the darkness, his pen scratching across paper until dawn broke. On the 7th morning, Russell Mercer was gone. The bed was empty when a nurse entered for morning rounds. On the precisely made bed lay a sealed envelope with 3 names written on it: Adrian, Samuel, and Marilyn Mercer. Chapter 2. The Price of Betrayal. Adrian Mercer's new German Shepherd, Apollo, wasn't actually new. The dog had been a gift from Travis Redfield 6 months earlier, kept hidden at his lake house where Adrian spent more time than at her own home lately. While her husband Russell built his construction empire through grueling 18-hour days, Adrian had built a parallel life with Travis, a smooth-talking real estate developer who had initially approached her to get closer to Russell's business. "Did the hospital call again?" Travis asked, pouring Adrian another glass of wine at his sleek lakeside property. "3 times, she sighed, scrolling through her missed calls. "Russell's doctor sounds increasingly desperate." "You can't go," Travis reminded her, sitting beside her on his designer sofa. "We've talked about this. If Russell dies, we get everything," Adrian finished. "The house, the investments, the company." She took a long sip of wine. "His life insurance alone is $5 million. Travis smiled, planting a kiss on her neck. "And if he lives, then we stick to the plan. The divorce papers are ready. Between my lawyer and your connections with the judge, I'll get the majority stake in everything." "And his parents?" "They're on board. Samuel and Marilyn have always thought Russell married beneath himself anyway." Adrian laughed bitterly. "Once I convinced them that Russell's been hiding assets from them and refusing to help with their retirement, they were eager to support me." "The perfect trap," Travis murmured. What Adrian didn't know was that Travis had planned his own separate trap. Once the Mercer fortune was transferred to Adrian, he had arrangements to ensure she wouldn't enjoy it for long. The offshore accounts were already established in his name alone. Meanwhile, Samuel and Marilyn Mercer sat in their modest living room, reviewing financial statements Travis had accidentally left during his last visit, falsified documents showing their son had secreted away millions that should have gone to family investments. "I always knew success would change him," Samuel muttered, his face flushed with anger. "After everything we sacrificed." "Adrian said he's been talking about cutting us off completely," Marilyn added, repeating the lie Adrian had carefully planted over Sunday dinners. Samuel shook his head. "If what Adrian and Travis showed us is true, we're entitled to at least half of those hidden accounts." The irony was that Russell had actually set up a generous trust for his parents' retirement, scheduled to be revealed on their upcoming anniversary, a surprise now destined never to be discovered. Across town, Calvin Weiss sat in his small apartment, staring at hospital records that shouldn't have been accessible to a mid-level IT administrator. As Russell's childhood friend and the only person who had remained loyal when Russell rose from humble construction worker to company owner, Calvin had been monitoring Russell's condition through backdoor hospital database access. "What the hell are you playing at, Russ?" he muttered, noting that his friend had checked himself out against medical advice. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Storage Unit 447. Code, November 27th, 82. Come alone. R." Calvin grabbed his keys immediately. The storage facility was on the outskirts of town. Unit 447 contained only a sealed envelope and a burner phone. The envelope held detailed documentation, bank statements, photos of Adrian and Travis together dating back 2 years, recorded conversations, and falsified documents that had been shown to Russell's parents. The phone rang in Calvin's hand. "Russ." Calvin answered. "They left me to die, Cal." Russell's voice was different, hollow yet somehow charged with purpose. "Jesus, Russ. Where are you? You should be in the hospital. I need 3 things from you." Russell continued as if he hadn't heard. "First, don't tell anyone I contacted you. Everyone needs to believe I'm missing, possibly dead. Second, access the backup server and retrieve all records from Project Lakeside Towers. Every contract, every payment, every signature. Third, contact Olivia Blackwell. She's expecting your call." "Russ, what's happening? What are you planning?" There was a long pause. "Justice, Cal. Nothing more, nothing less." The line went dead, leaving Calvin staring at the mountain of evidence documenting the elaborate betrayal orchestrated against his friend. At that same moment, Dr. Ramirez received a package by courier, A letter thanking her for her care along with documentation proving Russell had secretly paid off her substantial medical school debt. Attached was a note. Some debts should be forgiven. Others must be paid in full. Chapter 3. The Vanishing. 1 week after Russell's disappearance from the hospital, Adrian finally decided it was time to make an appearance. Maintaining the facade of a concerned wife had become necessary after Dr. Ramirez had called twice more, her tone increasingly suspicious. Accompanied by Travis, introduced as a family friend, and Russell's parents, Adrian strode in a lakeside memorial with practiced concern etched on her face. "I'm here to see my husband, Russell Mercer," she told the receptionist. The woman gave her an odd look. "Let me call Dr. Ramirez." Minutes later, Dr. Ramirez appeared, her expression neutral but eyes burning with barely concealed contempt. "Mrs. Mercer, after a week, you finally arrived." "We came as soon as we could," Samuel interjected defensively. "Of course," Dr. Ramirez replied coldly. "Well, you should know that your son, your husband, checked himself out yesterday against medical advice." "What?" Adrienne's shock was genuine. This wasn't part of the plan. How could you let him leave in his condition? "As his doctor, I strongly advised against it, but as a legal adult who hadn't lost cognitive function, it was his right." Dr. Ramirez held out an envelope. "He left this for you." Travis stepped forward. "Who authorized his release?" Dr. Ramirez's eyes narrowed. "And you are?" "Travis Redfield, family friend." "Well, Mr. Redfield, patient releases don't require outside authorization. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have patients who actually receive visitors." She turned and walked away. Adrian tore open the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 3 lines of text. "I know everything. I forgive nothing. I'm coming for what's mine." The color drained from her face. "What is it?" Samuel demanded, snatching the note. His face paled as he read it, then passed it to Travis. Travis crumpled the paper in his fist. "This changes nothing. He's injured, disoriented, probably making empty threats from some motel." "He knows," Adrian whispered. "Knows what?" Travis hissed, glancing around to ensure no one was listening. Before she could answer, a hospital security guard approached. "Mrs. Mercer? Detective Morales would like to speak with you." In a small conference room, Detective Victor Morales sat reviewing a file. His weathered face gave nothing away as they entered. "Thank you for coming in," he said, not bothering to stand. "I have some questions about your husband's accident." "What about it?" Adrian asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "For one, why the vehicle that struck your husband's car was reported stolen just 1 hour before the accident, yet traffic cameras show it had been following Mr. Mercer for at least 3 days prior." Travis shifted uncomfortably. "Detective, what are you implying?" Morales ignored him, focusing on Adrian. "I'm also curious why phone records show you were in contact with a registered owner of that vehicle 6 times in the week before the accident." Adrian's careful composure cracked. "I want a lawyer." Interesting response to a simple question, Morales noted. "One more thing before you go. The hospital security cameras show a visitor to Mr. Mercer's room at 3 a.m. the morning he disappeared." He slid a grainy photo across the table. "Any idea who this might be?" The image showed a hooded figure whose face was carefully turned away from cameras. "No," Adrian whispered. "Curious, because the key card used to access the room at that hour was yours, Mrs. Mercer. The one listed in hospital records for family access, which you never used during visiting hours." Samuel and Marilyn exchanged alarmed glances. "I think we're done here," Travis announced, standing. "We'll have Mrs. Mercer's attorney contact you." As they left the hospital, Adrienne's phone chimed with a text message from an unknown number. "Check your joint accounts." With shaking hands, she opened her banking app. Every joint account had been emptied. The business accounts, investment portfolios, everything gone. "He's ruined us," she gasped. Travis grabbed her arm roughly. "Pull yourself together. This isn't over," but was only the beginning. That night, while Adrian and Travis frantically called banks and lawyers, Russell Mercer watched from a car across the street. Beside him sat Calvin, who handed him a tablet displaying security camera footage from inside Adrian and Travis's meeting at the lake house. "Everything's in motion," Calvin said. Russell's face, still bruised from the accident, revealed no emotion as he watched his wife and her lover panic. Good. Now we move to phase 2. Are you sure about this, Russ? There's no coming back from what you're planning. Russell turned to his friend, his eyes reflecting nothing but cold resolve. I died in that hospital room, Cal. What's left has only one purpose. He started the engine and drove away, leaving behind the last vestiges of the man he once was. Chapter 4. The Architect of Vengeance. 3 months vanished like smoke. Russell Mercer, legally declared missing and presumed dead after exhaustive but fruitless searches, had transformed himself in a remote cabin in the Montana wilderness. His body, once broken, had been rebuilt through relentless physical therapy and training. His mind, once clouded by betrayal, now operated with surgical precision. The cabin belonged to Dr. Leo Winters, a former military surgeon who specialized in helping people disappear. For a substantial fee, paid from one of Russell's hidden offshore accounts, Dr. Winters had provided medical care, a new identity, and total discretion. Your ribs have healed nicely, Dr. Winters observed during their final examination. The facial reconstruction, too. Your own mother wouldn't recognize you now. Russell touched the subtle changes to his jawline and cheekbones. That's the point. The voice modulator implant needs another week to fully integrate. Speak as little as possible until then. Russell nodded, studying his new reflection. Alexander Pierce stared back, a ghost created from forged documents and careful planning. The psychological adjustment is just as important, Dr. Winters cautioned. Revenge may feel righteous, but it consumes the vengeful first. I'm already consumed, Russell replied flatly. Ever since I woke up alone in that hospital. Meanwhile, Adrienne's life had collapsed into chaos. The investigation into Russell's accident had stalled, but never closed. Detective Morales made weekly calls with just one more question, each one digging deeper into her relationship with Travis. The financial devastation was total. Not only had the joint accounts been emptied, but Adrienne discovered Russell had secretly sold their house 2 weeks before his accident, with closing scheduled for next month. She would soon be homeless. Russell's construction company had undergone a mysterious restructuring one day before his accident, transferring controlling interest to a blind trust that even the company's attorneys couldn't penetrate. Travis, whose promises of security had evaporated when his access to Russell's wealth disappeared, had begun pulling away, making excuses to avoid her calls. Samuel and Marilyn Mercer faced their own reckoning. Their modest retirement savings had vanished, electronically transferred to an untraceable account after they'd been tricked into signing what they thought were insurance documents related to Russell's disappearance. Worse, they'd received anonymously delivered evidence suggesting that Adrienne had manipulated them with false information about their son. The documented trust fund Russell had actually created for them, which they'd never known about, had been dissolved upon his disappearance, the funds redirected to various children's charities. One day in late autumn, Calvin met a man called Alexander Pierce at an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town. Though Calvin recognized his childhood friend beneath the new face, he was stunned by the transformation. Jesus, Russ, you look dead. Russell finished with a voice that sounded nothing like his former self. Good, because Russell Mercer no longer exists. Calvin handed over a thick file. Everything you asked for. Travis Redfield's complete history. The man's made enemies everywhere. His real estate developments are mostly money laundering operations for the Costia crime family. They don't know he's been skimming. Russell nodded. And the special project? Coded and ready. Once activated, it'll unravel everything Travis has built, piece by piece. Adrienne, Calvin hesitated. She's desperate, about to be evicted. She's been trying to access Russell's life insurance, but without a body. And my parents? They know they were manipulated. They've been trying to reach out through official channels, claiming they have information about your disappearance. Russell's expression remained impassive. Too late for regrets. What about Sophie? Calvin asked cautiously. At the mention of Travis's ex-wife, Russell's composure flickered momentarily. Is she still willing to help? More than willing. After what Travis did to her and her daughter, She's been waiting 3 years for this opportunity. Russell checked his watch. It's time to bring our players together. Activate the program tonight. And Calvin? After this meeting, Alexander Pierce never knew Russell Mercer. Remember that. That night, an anonymous email reached the Costia family's leadership, revealing Travis's embezzlement with documented proof. Simultaneously, the algorithm Calvin had designed began systematically attacking Travis's financial infrastructure, freezing accounts, exposing hidden transactions, and triggering automatic audits. By morning, Travis Redfield would be a marked man from multiple directions. And Russell, now Alexander Pierce, would be waiting. Chapter 5. Wheels Within Wheels. The Ashford Hotel's presidential suite offered a perfect vantage point. From his windows, Russell could see both Travis's penthouse apartment and the offices of Redfield Development. Between sips of black coffee, he watched the chaos unfold through high-powered binoculars. Men in dark suits, Costia enforcers, entered the building at 9:17 a.m. They emerged 20 minutes later without Travis, who had apparently fled minutes before their arrival. Russell's phone vibrated with updates from the sophisticated tracking system he'd established. Travis had withdrawn emergency cash from a bank across town and was now heading toward the lakeside property where he'd conducted his affair with Adrian. Everything proceeding exactly as calculated. A soft knock at the door broke his concentration. He admitted Sophie Redfield, Travis's ex-wife, a woman whose elegance masked a steely resolve forged through suffering. "He's running," Russell informed her, returning to the window. "As predicted," Sophie replied, setting down her designer bag. "The offshore accounts? Already frozen. My algorithm triggered fraud alerts across 6 countries simultaneously." Russell turned to face her. "Are you prepared for your part?" Sophie's eyes hardened. "After Travis bankrupted me, denied my daughter her medical treatments, and left us with nothing, I've been preparing for 3 years." Russell nodded, remembering why he'd chosen her as an ally. When investigating Travis's past, he discovered Sophie's story, how Travis had systematically drained their marital assets while their daughter Lily battled leukemia, then abandoned them both when the medical bills mounted. "Your daughter?" Russell asked. A rare smile softened Sophie's features. "Remission for 16 months now, thanks to the anonymous donor who covered her treatment." Russell nodded slightly. The $5 million he'd diverted from his own life insurance policy, converted to cash before his disappearance, had been put to better use than Adrian and Travis had intended. "Once this is done," Russell said, "the remaining trust fund will secure her future permanently." Sophie studied him. "You know, for someone orchestrating such elaborate revenge, you've shown remarkable compassion to uninvolved parties." "This isn't about punishing innocents," Russell replied. "It's about justice precisely measured." His phone buzzed again. "Adrian is moving too, heading to the lake house. The desperate wife seeking shelter with her lover," Sophie observed. "Right into your trap." "Not my trap," Russell corrected. "Their own." Across town, Detective Victor Morales received an anonymous package. Inside, he found meticulously documented evidence connecting Travis Redfield to the stolen vehicle that had struck Russell Mercer's car, along with bank transfers linking both Travis and Adrian to the driver, a career criminal now mysteriously deceased. Morales immediately assembled his team. "We've got enough for arrest warrants. Move now." Meanwhile, Samuel and Marilyn Mercer sat in their kitchen, staring at the foreclosure notice. Their modest home, once fully paid for, had been remortgaged using documents they'd signed without reading. Papers Adrian had assured them were related to Russell's business. "We've lost everything," Samuel whispered, his hands trembling. "Our son, our home. We deserve it," Marilyn replied, tears streaming down her face. "We abandoned him when he needed us most." The doorbell rang. Outside stood Olivia Blackwell, Russell's attorney. "Mr. and Mrs. Mercer," she said crisply, "I need to discuss your son's estate." At the lake house, Travis threw clothes haphazardly into a suitcase while Adrian watched from the doorway. "You're just leaving?" she asked incredulously. "What about me?" "Wake up, Adrian," Travis snapped. "It's over. Whatever Russell did before disappearing, he's burned us both. The Costias want my head. The feds are freezing my accounts. I have maybe an hour before this place is swarming with either gangsters or FBI. We can fix this, Adrian pleaded. We still have a lake house, my jewelry. Travis laughed bitterly. You think I put this place in my name? It's owned by a shell corporation that's probably being dismantled as we speak. As for your jewelry, he went to a painting on the wall, swung it aside to reveal a safe, and entered the combination. It was empty. What the hell? He muttered, frantically searching the void. Instead of valuables, he found a single note. Did you really think I wouldn't have contingencies? Travis staggered backward. Impossible. The sound of approaching vehicles drew them both to the window. 3 black SUVs and 2 police cruisers rolled up the driveway. Run! Travis grabbed his half-packed bag and bolted for the rear exit. They never made it to the dock. Police officers swarmed from all directions, weapons drawn. Travis Redfield, Adrian Mercer, Detective Morales called through a bullhorn. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, fraud, and embezzlement. As they were handcuffed and placed in separate vehicles, neither noticed the nondescript sedan parked just beyond the police barricade, nor the man watching impassively from behind tinted windows. Russell started his car. Phase 2 was complete. Now for the final act. Chapter 6, The Spider's Web. The county detention center's interview room was deliberately uncomfortable. Hard metal chairs, fluorescent lighting that buzzed incessantly, and a persistent chill that seeped through thin prison uniforms. Adrian Mercer sat shivering, her once perfect appearance now marked by shadows under her eyes and limp, unwashed hair. 3 days in custody had stripped away her polished veneer. The door opened to admit a man she'd never seen before, tall, with angular features and eyes that seemed somehow familiar despite their steel-gray color. Mrs. Mercer? Alexander Pierce, special financial investigator. His voice had an unusual timbre, almost mechanical in its precision. I have some questions about your husband's assets. Adrian straightened. Have they found Russell? No, Pierce replied, arranging documents on the table. But we've uncovered interesting financial movements preceding his disappearance. I don't know anything about Russell's finances, she lied. He handled everything. Pierce smiled thinly. Yet phone records show you had 17 calls with Maxwell United Bank in the week before your husband's accident, specifically with their department handling overseas transfers. Adrienne's composure slipped. I want my lawyer present. Of course. Pierce nodded, gathering his papers. But you should know, Travis Redfield is cooperating fully. His statement paints you as the architect of everything, including the attempt on your husband's life. He's lying. Adrian slammed her palms on the table. It was his idea from the start. Pierce paused at the door. I'll note your willingness to discuss Mr. Redfield's involvement. We'll continue this conversation with your attorney present. In an identical room down the hall, Travis Redfield was equally disheveled, but considerably more calculating. When Pierce entered, Travis immediately assessed him as someone who might be manipulated. Mr. Pierce, thank God. I've been trying to explain. I'm a victim in all this. Pierce sat down, his movements deliberate. A victim who happens to have paid $50,000 to the driver who rammed Russell Mercer's vehicle. That's an interesting definition of victimhood. Travis paled. That money was extortion. Adrienne's brother threatened to expose our relationship if I didn't pay him. Adrian doesn't have a brother, Mr. Redfield. Travis's calculated facade crumbled. Look, I can help you find where Russell hid the real money. There's millions unaccounted for. Why would I be interested in that? Pierce asked mildly. Travis leaned forward conspiratorially. Everyone has a price. Help me get a deal, and I'll make it worth your while. Pierce stood abruptly. Mr. Redfield, I'm not who you think I am. For just a moment, his voice modulator disengaged, and Russell's true voice emerged. But then, neither are you. Travis recoiled in shock. Russell, but Pierce had already left, the door closing with a final sounding click. Across town, Samuel and Marilyn Mercer sat in Olivia Blackwell's sterile office, bewildered by the documents before them. I don't understand, Samuel said. These show Russell created a trust for us years ago. He did, Olivia confirmed. $5 million, untouchable by creditors, divorce settlements, or criminal proceedings. But we were told he was hiding money from us, Marilyn whispered. You were lied to, Olivia stated flatly, by people who knew exactly how to manipulate you against your own son. Samuel covered his face with trembling hands. We abandoned him, our own son, fighting for his life, and we believe the worst without question. The trust has specific conditions, Olivia continued dispassionately. You can access the funds for basic living expenses only. The principle remains intact until particular conditions are met. What conditions? Marilyn asked. Olivia slid another document across the desk. You'll need to read this letter first. The letter, written in Russell's hand, detailed every manipulative lie they had believed, every moment they had chosen Adrienne's fabrications over their son's lifetime of demonstrable love and support. It was clinical, factual, and devastating in its accuracy. He knew, Samuel whispered. Even before the accident, he knew they were poisoning us against him. Not entirely, Olivia corrected. The original trust had no such conditions. Those were added the day he checked himself out of the hospital. That night, Russell stood on the balcony of his hotel suite, watching the city lights while Sophie poured 2 glasses of whiskey. Adrienne and Travis have turned on each other completely, she reported, handing him a glass. Their attorneys are practically racing to the prosecutor's office with new accusations daily. And the Costia family? Still looking for Travis. The evidence you planted linking him to informing on their operations has them particularly motivated. Even if he somehow escapes conviction, he'll never be safe. Russell nodded. The final phase begins tomorrow. Are you sure about this part? Sophie asked carefully. It seems excessive. Justice often does, Russell replied. Each will face precisely what they deserve. No more, no less. And after? Sophie studied him over a glass. What does Alexander Pierce do when this is finished? Russell gazed out at the city, the place where Russell Mercer had built a life, a marriage, a company, all now ashes. Alexander Pierce disappears. As for what comes after, I haven't decided. You could start over, Sophie suggested. You're wealthy, unrecognizable, officially dead. Perfect freedom. There's no starting over, Russell replied quietly. Only moving forward. In the darkness, he raised his glass. To justice, precisely measured. Sophie clinked her glass against his. To justice. Neither mentioned the emptiness that would remain when justice was finally served. Chapter 7. Checkmate. The courthouse buzzed with anticipation. After months of legal maneuvering, bail hearings, and increasingly desperate attempts by both defendants to implicate each other, the joint trial of Adrienne Mercer and Travis Redfield for the attempted murder of Russell Mercer was finally beginning. Reporters clustered near the entrance, hoping for a glimpse of the defendants who had become media sensations. The story had everything: sex, betrayal, attempted murder, and a missing victim presumed dead. Inside, Alexander Pierce sat in the back row of the gallery, unremarkable in his gray suit, just another spectator to the legal proceedings. Only Calvin, seated several rows away as planned, knew his true identity. The bailiff called for all to rise as Judge Martha Kimball entered. Known for her no-nonsense approach and scrupulous adherence to procedure, she was exactly the judge Russell had hoped would be assigned. The prosecutorial team was led by District Attorney Helena Ward, whose reputation for methodical case-building made her formidable. Russell had anonymously provided her office with a roadmap of evidence so comprehensive that the case practically built itself. As Adrienne and Travis were led in separately, Russell noted how thoroughly their appearances had deteriorated. Adrienne's designer clothes had been replaced by a modest skirt and blouse, an attempt to appear humble and sympathetic that clashed with her innate arrogance. Travis, meanwhile, had adopted the look of a broken man, hoping for sympathy where none would be forthcoming. Neither defendant looked at the other. After opening statements, D.A. Ward called her first witness, Detective Victor Morales. Detective, please describe the evidence that led to the arrests of the defendants. Morales detailed the financial trail connecting both defendants to the driver of the truck, phone records showing coordination before the accident, and the damning text messages recovered from their devices. During cross-examination, Adrienne's attorney attempted to distance her from the conspiracy. "Isn't it true that my client never directly communicated with the driver of the vehicle?" "She didn't have to," Morales replied. Mr. Redfield served as the intermediary, but Mrs. Mercer's phone records show she was the one who researched Russell Mercer's route that day, traffic patterns, and even the specific intersection where the collision occurred. Travis's attorney tried a different approach. "Detective, isn't it possible that someone else orchestrated these events to frame my client?" "We follow the money, sir," Morales replied flatly. "Unless your client is claiming someone forced him to withdraw $50,000 in cash, hand it to the now-deceased driver, and then send a text saying it's done immediately after the collision. No, there's no plausible alternative explanation." By day's end, Russell observed the jury's expressions. They were already convinced of guilt, and the trial had barely begun. Outside the courthouse, Samuel and Marilyn Mercer faced a barrage of reporters' questions. They'd attended despite not being called as witnesses, dressed in somber clothes that spoke of mourning. "We trusted the wrong people," Samuel stated, his voice breaking. "We failed our son in the worst possible way. We just pray that wherever Russell is, if he's still alive, he can find it in his heart to understand our terrible mistake," Marilyn added, tears streaming down her face. Russell watched from his car, unmoved. Their remorse changed nothing. That evening, a package was delivered to Adrienne's attorney, an unmarked envelope containing photographs of Adrienne meeting with known members of the Costia family months before Russell's accident, along with bank statements showing payments that aligned perfectly with the timeline of the conspiracy. Simultaneously, Travis's attorney received similar documentation showing his client had been embezzling from the Costia family's legitimate businesses for years, information that would certainly reach the crime family through the attorney's known connections. The message was clear. Neither defendant would escape justice, either through legal channels or otherwise. Back in his hotel suite, Russell reviewed the next day's evidence with Sophie. "DA Ward will introduce the life insurance policy tomorrow," Sophie noted, scanning the court schedule. $5 million with a double indemnity clause for accidental death. 10 million reasons for murder, Russell observed, plus control of the company and assets worth another 30 million. "Speaking of which," Sophie said, handing him a tablet, "the restructuring is complete. Mercer Construction now officially belongs to the Employee Ownership Trust. 300 employees now have guaranteed jobs and profit sharing for life." Russell nodded with satisfaction. His company, built from nothing with his own hands and determination, would survive him, benefiting those who had actually contributed to its success. "And my parents' situation?" As instructed, they've been informed that they'll lose the house but can relocate to the managed senior living facility, with expenses covered by the trust. They'll be comfortable but never wealthy. Their monthly allowance will require community service hours to maintain. "Perfect," Russell said. "Justice precisely measured." "There's something else," Sophie added hesitantly. "Dr. Ramirez has been looking for you, or rather, for Russell Mercer. She's convinced you're alive." Russell's expression didn't change. "She has good instincts. Should we be concerned?" "No. After tomorrow, it won't matter who knows the truth." Sophie studied him carefully. "You're planning something beyond what we've discussed." Russell merely smiled. "Get some rest, Sophie. Tomorrow will be eventful." That night, alone in his suite, Russell opened a small box containing a simple gold wedding band, his own, removed at the hospital and recovered by Calvin. He turned it in his fingers, remembering a different life, different dreams. Then he closed the box and set it aside. Tomorrow would bring an end to Russell Mercer's story, one way or another. Chapter 8. The Dead Man's Hand. The courtroom fell absolutely silent as the prosecution called its surprise witness on the third day of trial. The state calls Alexander Pierce. Russell walked confidently to the witness stand, feeling Adrienne and Travis's confused stares. Neither had connected him to their ongoing destruction. After being sworn in, DA Ward began her questioning. "Mr. Pierce, please state your occupation." "I'm a forensic financial investigator specializing in complex fraud schemes." And were you hired to investigate matters related to Russell Mercer's finances? Yes, by Olivia Blackwell, Mr. Mercer's attorney, shortly after his disappearance. What did your investigation reveal? Russell detailed the elaborate financial maneuvers that had occurred in the months before his accident, careful to speak of himself in the third person. Mr. Mercer had apparently discovered the conspiracy against him approximately 3 months before the attempt on his life. He began systematically protecting his assets, creating employee trusts, and documenting the betrayal. Objection! Adrienne's attorney shouted. Speculation as to what Mr. Mercer knew or didn't know. Sustained, Judge Kimball ruled. The witness will restrict testimony to financial movements, not presumed motives. DA Ward adjusted seamlessly. Mr. Pierce, did you find evidence of financial transactions between the defendants and other parties relevant to this case? Yes, Russell replied. Mrs. Mercer conducted multiple meetings with insurance representatives to verify the double indemnity clause would pay out for a vehicular accident. Mr. Redfield made cash withdrawals totaling exactly the amount paid to the driver of the truck. Additionally, both defendants began liquidating Mr. Mercer's assets even before the accident occurred. He continued methodically outlining the conspiracy, watching the jury's expressions harden with each revelation. Adrienne seemed paralyzed in her seat, while Travis whispered frantically to his attorney. During cross-examination, Travis's attorney attempted to undermine the testimony. Mr. Pierce, isn't it convenient that you've appeared with this information after Mr. Mercer vanished? How do we know you aren't involved yourself? A reasonable question, Russell acknowledged, which is why all evidence has been independently verified by Detective Morales' team and 3 separate forensic accounting firms. And how did you come by this information so easily when police investigators initially found nothing suspicious? Russell smiled slightly. I never said it was easy, but motivated individuals often find what unmotivated bureaucracies miss. The attorney changed tactics. Have you ever met Russell Mercer? A moment of absolute silence filled the courtroom. Yes, Russell replied calmly. I have. The courtroom erupted. Judge Kimball banged her gavel repeatedly. Order. Mr. Pierce, are you claiming Russell Mercer is alive? I'm claiming I met with him, Russell clarified. Whether he remains alive is a separate question. DA Ward, who had been briefed on this possibility, quickly intervened. Your Honor, we have additional evidence to present regarding Mr. Mercer's current status. She produced a sealed envelope. This was delivered to my office this morning with instructions to open it only during today's proceedings. Judge Kimball accepted the envelope and broke the seal. Her expression remained professional, but her eyes widened slightly as she reviewed the contents. Counselors approached the bench. After a heated sidebar discussion, Judge Kimball addressed the courtroom. We'll take a 30-minute recess. Bailiff, secure the defendants and clear the courtroom. As Russell walked out, he caught Dr. Ramirez's gaze from the gallery. She studied him intently, a flash of recognition crossing her face before she nodded almost imperceptibly. During the recess, Samuel and Marilyn Mercer were escorted to a private conference room where Olivia Blackwell waited. What's happening? Samuel demanded. Your son left specific instructions, Olivia explained, for various scenarios. One of them is unfolding now. Russell is alive, isn't he? Marilyn whispered. Olivia's expression gave nothing away. In the next hour, everything will be resolved. How that resolution affects you depends entirely on Russell's final decision. When court resumed, the tension was palpable. Judge Kimball addressed the packed courtroom. Based on evidence just presented to this court, I am calling a witness not on the original list. The court calls Russell Mercer. The gallery erupted again as the rear doors opened. Russell, not Alexander Pierce, but Russell Mercer, walked down the center aisle. Adrienne clutched the defense table, her face ashen. Travis looked as though he might vomit. Russell had reversed the subtle facial modifications, removed the voice modulator, and dressed in the exact suit he'd worn the day of his accident. The effect was deliberately theatrical, a dead man walking. After being sworn in, he faced the stunned courtroom. Yes, Your Honor, I am Russell Mercer. Mr. Mercer, Judge Kimball said carefully, "Can you explain your apparent death and disappearance?" When I woke in the hospital after the attempt on my life, I discovered my wife, her lover, and my parents had all abandoned me to die. Upon investigation, I uncovered their conspiracy against me. Rather than confront them directly, I chose to disappear and allow justice to unfold naturally. And Alexander Pierce? A necessary disguise to complete my investigation safely. D.A. Ward, recovering her composure, approached the witness stand. "Mr. Mercer, are you prepared to testify regarding the conspiracy against your life?" "I am." For the next 2 hours, Russell methodically detailed every aspect of the plot. Dates, times, recorded conversations, bank transfers, meetings, all documented with evidence already entered into the record. Throughout his testimony, he never once looked at Adrian, Travis, or his parents. They were simply facts in his narrative, objects rather than people. When Travis's attorney began his cross-examination, his approach was desperate. "Mr. Mercer, isn't this elaborate disappearance and reappearance simply a publicity stunt to destroy my client's reputation?" "Mr. Redfield destroyed his own reputation when he conspired to murder me," Russell replied evenly. "I merely ensured the truth would be discovered. But you deceived the court by testifying as Alexander Pierce." "I testified truthfully in both identities. The name changed, the facts did not." Adrian's attorney attempted a different strategy. "Mr. Mercer, isn't it true that you were emotionally abusive to my client, leading her to seek comfort elsewhere?" For the first time, Russell turned to look directly at Adrian. "Is that your defense? That I deserve to be murdered because I worked long hours building a company that provided your luxury lifestyle?" Adrian couldn't meet his gaze. By day's end, both defense teams were in shambles. The jury would clearly convict on all counts. As court adjourned, Russell was escorted out under heavy security. In the hallway, he finally came face to face with his parents. "Russell," his father began, tears streaming down his face. "Son, we don't," Russell interrupted, his voice devoid of emotion. "You've received the terms of the trust. That's all you'll ever get from me. We know we don't deserve forgiveness," his mother whispered. "But please." "You're right," Russell cut her off. "You don't deserve forgiveness. When I was fighting for my life, you chose to believe the worst of me based on nothing but the word of a woman you barely knew. There's nothing left to discuss." He walked past them without another glance, leaving them sobbing in the hallway. Outside, Dr. Ramirez waited by his car. "I knew it was you," she said quietly. "Your eyes. They didn't change." Russell nodded. "Thank you for trying to get them to come. It revealed who they truly were." "What happens now?" she asked. "Justice," Russell replied. "Then I disappear again, permanently this time." Dr. Ramirez studied him carefully. "The man I treated wouldn't throw away his life for revenge." "That man died in your hospital," Russell said. "What remains is only his purpose." He got into his car and drove away, leaving the doctor standing alone on the courthouse steps. Chapter 9. Ashes and Legacy. The verdicts were unanimous and delivered without recommendation for mercy. Adrian Mercer and Travis Redfield, guilty on all counts, including conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, fraud, and embezzlement. The sentences, 25 years to life for each defendant, with no possibility of parole for 20 years. Russell observed from the gallery as they were led away in handcuffs. Adrian sobbing uncontrollably, Travis ashen-faced and trembling. Neither looked in his direction. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed around Russell, shouting questions. "Mr. Mercer, how does it feel to see justice served? Will you reclaim your company now? What about your parents? Will you reconcile?" Russell faced the cameras calmly. "Justice has been served according to the law. As for what comes next, Russell Mercer died in that hospital room. The man standing before you is merely executing his final wishes." With those cryptic words, he pushed through the crowd to where Calvin waited with the car. "It's done," Calvin said as they drove away. "Almost," Russell corrected. "One final piece remains." That evening, a private gathering took place at Mercer Construction headquarters. 300 employees filled the main floor, anxiety evident on their faces. Rumors of the company's fate had spread following the trial's conclusion. Russell stood on a small platform, facing the people who had helped build his success. "You've all heard the verdict," he began. "What you haven't heard is what happens to this company, to your jobs and futures." He gestured to Olivia, who distributed documents to department heads. Effective immediately, Mercer Construction becomes Mercer Employee Trust. Each of you now owns a stake proportionate to your years of service. The company cannot be sold, broken up, or taken public. It belongs to those who built it, to you. Stunned silence gave way to applause, then to tears and cheers as the implications sank in. "I built this company from nothing," Russell continued, "and despite attempts to destroy it, it will outlive me, providing security for your families for generations." "What about you, boss?" called Luis Martinez, his foreman of 10 years. "I won't be staying," Russell replied simply. "My work here is finished." After the celebration, Russell met Sophie at the airport. Her daughter Lily waited in a private lounge, a cheerful 7-year-old showing no signs of her previous illness. "The trust is established," Russell confirmed. "Her medical care is guaranteed for life, and her education fully funded." Sophie squeezed his hand. "You've given us our lives back. What will you do now?" Russell gazed out at the darkening sky. "Disappear. Alexander Pierce has a new identity and passport waiting in Geneva." "That sounds lonely," Sophie observed. "It's what's left," Russell replied. They said their goodbyes, and Russell watched as Sophie and Lily boarded their flight to a new life in California. Later that night, Russell returned to his hotel suite for the final time. On the desk lay the last element of his plan, a sealed letter addressed to Dr. Ramirez, along with documentation transferring a substantial donation to the hospital's trauma center. The letter was simple. "Dr. Ramirez, you once said the man you treated wouldn't throw away his life for revenge. You were right. Revenge was never the goal. Justice was. Now that justice is served, Russell Mercer can truly rest. What rises from those ashes is for me alone to determine. Perhaps someday, in a different place, a better man might emerge. Thank you for being the only one who cared whether I lived or died. That mattered more than you'll ever know. R." Russell sealed the envelope and placed it in the hotel's overnight mail. At dawn, he boarded a private flight using his Alexander Pierce passport. By the time the sun set, he had already crossed an ocean, leaving behind the ashes of his former life. 6 months later, a man calling himself Richard Miller opened a small architectural consulting firm in a coastal Portuguese town. He lived simply, worked diligently, and kept to himself. Local residents noted his generosity to children's causes and medical charities, but respected his privacy. If he sometimes stood on his balcony at night, staring at the ocean with eyes that reflected old pain and new purpose, no one was close enough to notice. Russell Mercer had kept his vow. He had forgiven nothing and no one who had betrayed him. Justice had been precisely measured and delivered without mercy. But perhaps, in time, Richard Miller might learn something Russell Mercer never could: how to build a life focused on creation rather than retribution, on future rather than past. That, however, would be a different story. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.